Right now, in a secret facility in eastern China, scientists are controlling something 10 times hotter than the sun's core. One mistake and the experiment dies instantly. But if they succeed, they could solve the energy crisis forever. This is the artificial sun, and it just ran for 17 minutes straight. That is a world record that changes everything. By the time this video ends, you will understand how they built a star inside a laboratory, why some call this the holy grail of science, and why others are worried about what happens next. The real sun sits 93 million miles away, burning at 15 million degrees Celsius in its core. That heat powers every living thing on Earth. But this machine in China called East reached 120 million degrees Celsius, and it spiked to 160 million degrees Celsius for brief moments. 10 times hotter than the actual sun. Think about that. We built something on Earth that makes the sun look cold. Here's what the sun does. It smashes hydrogen atoms together so hard they fuse into helium, and that releases massive energy. This process is called fusion. Scientists have wanted to copy this for 70 years because it is clean, limitless power. One glass of seawater could produce as much energy as a barrel of oil through fusion. Since oceans cover most of our planet, we would have fuel that lasts forever. But there is one massive problem. The sun has gravity to squeeze atoms together. We do not. So we have to cheat by making things even hotter. When atoms move incredibly fast, they get hot. To make them slam into each other hard enough to fuse, we need chaos which refuse. We need temperatures that break every record. That is where East comes in. Think of it as a giant metal donut. Scientists pump hydrogen gas into this donut, then blast it with powerful electricity. The gas heats up and transforms into plasma. Plasma is not solid, liquid, or gas. It is a fourth state of matter made of supercharged particles. It is what lightning is made of. But this plasma is the hottest thing on planet Earth. Now here is the impossible part. If you have soup that is 100 million degrees, you cannot put it in a bowl. Any container would vaporize instantly. Metal, rock, glass, concrete, everything would turn to gas in a fraction of a second. So how do you hold something that destroys everything it touches? Magnets. The walls of the donut are lined with massive superconducting magnets. Since plasma carries an electric charge, these magnets push on it without touching it. They create an invisible cage that suspends the plasma in midair, floating in the center of the donut, never touching the walls. It is like using force fields to trap a wild animal in the middle of a room. This is what the Chinese team achieved. They held this furious ball of plasma stable for 1,056 seconds. That might sound short, but in fusion research, it is an eternity. Most experiments collapse after a few seconds when the plasma goes wild and hits the walls. Keeping it controlled for over 17 minutes proves we are finally getting close to making this work. You might wonder why we need temperatures higher than the actual sun. Remember, the sun has crushing gravity on its side. Gravity does half the work by forcing atoms together. We do not have that advantage. We have to compensate with pure heat, making the atoms move so fast they collide by sheer speed alone. That is why the target is over 100 million degrees. Now let's talk about why this matters to your life right now. Most electricity flowing through your walls comes from burning coal, oil, or natural gas. These fossil fuels pollute the air, heat up the planet, and cause climate change. They also run out eventually. We cannot dig up coal forever. Solar panels and wind turbines are great, but the sun does not always shine, and the wind does not always blow. We need power that is always on and never runs out. That is the promise of fusion. Imagine a world where electricity is so cheap and abundant that you never worry about your bill. Air conditioning runs freely. Electric cars charge for pennies. Entire countries are powered by facilities the size of a warehouse, using nothing but seawater as fuel. No smoke, no pollution, no radioactive waste lasting thousands of years. That is not science fiction anymore. That is the finish line scientists can now see. Now I know what you are thinking. Nuclear sounds dangerous. Images of Chernobyl and mushroom clouds come to mind. But here is the crazy part. This literally cannot explode or melt down. Unlike today's nuclear power plants, which split big atoms apart and create toxic waste, fusion joins small atoms together. The process is fundamentally different. If anything breaks, the magnets shut off, and the plasma instantly hits the wall and cools down. The reaction just stops, like blowing out a candle. You cannot accidentally create a runaway chain reaction because fusion is incredibly hard to maintain. It wants to stop. We have to fight constantly to keep it going. The success in China is massive, but we are not finished yet. East is an experiment. It does not generate electricity for homes. In fact, it uses more energy to run than it produces. The ultimate goal is something called ignition. Ignition happens when the fusion reaction creates enough heat to sustain itself without constant outside power. Once we crack that code, we can build real power plants connected to the electrical grid. Scientists worldwide are racing toward this goal. In southern France, 35 countries, including the United States, China, Russia, and most of Europe, are collaborating on a project called ITER. It is the largest fusion experiment ever attempted, using everything learned from machines like East to build something even bigger. ITER costs over $25 billion, making it the most expensive science experiment in human history. That is the price of 3 Mars missions, or 25 football stadiums. Some critics say we are spending too much on something that might not work for decades. They argue we should invest that money in solar panels today. But if fusion succeeds, it solves the energy problem for thousands of years. It is a gamble on the future. Here is the reality check. This probably will not power your home until 2050. That is 25 years away. But think about it. 25 years ago, we did not have smartphones. The internet was barely a thing. Google had just launched. What seemed impossible then is everywhere now. And unlike those technologies, fusion is already working. We just need to scale it up. The physics is proven. The engineering is the challenge. The scientists in China proved we can capture a piece of a star in a magnetic bottle. They proved we can reach temperatures that sound like science fiction. Now they need to keep it burning for days and months instead of minutes. Every second they add to that record brings us closer to clean, unlimited energy. It is a race against time to save the planet from pollution and power our civilization with the same force that lights up the stars. So next time you look up at the sun, remember that right now on Earth, there is a metal donut humming with energy, 10 times hotter than what you see in the sky. What once seemed impossible is happening in real time. In 2024, China held a star in a bottle for 17 minutes. By 2050, that star might power entire cities. You just watched history in the making. Want more stories about the impossible becoming possible? Hit subscribe because the future is coming faster than you think. And you do not want to miss what happens next.